Alright, g'day. Welcome to this brief tutorial on how to set up the Battlefield Manager system for ALiVE. Here we are in Altus. We've got our Battlefield Manager and ALiVE mods loaded, and I've simply placed down a single player with a Zeus module so that we can watch our scenario take place. And I'm going to set up a Battlefield Manager scenario on this small peninsula that sticks out to the northeast of Altus. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by placing down our required ALiVE modules. I'm going to place the ALiVE required and the ALiVE virtual AI system. And these are the only two ALiVE modules that we need for the BFM system to work. I'm going to turn on debugging so that we can watch our system. Now what we need to do, so we need to define the battle area that the combat is going to take place in. So we're going to create a marker that is the size and shape of the battlefield area that we want. And we're going to position that appropriately. And what we're going to do is we're going to give this the name, well, in this case we'll call it Battlefield. This can be any name, but that will be the variable name that allows the BFM system to identify the combat area. So now we're going to go to the BFM modules, and we're going to place the main module, the Map Objectives Manager, which will survey this map area and canvass it for points of interest. And place the Frontline Manager, and we're going to place the Reinforcements Manager that will manage the reinsert of virtual units. And we're going to sync all of them to the main module. So this is the fundamental unit of BFM. All BFM scenarios will have this main structure. So in the battle area marker we're going to place that same name, and the only other settings here, the startup delay is just used to delay the initialization of BFM past the initialization of ALiVE. Depending on the power of the PC or server that you're running on, this startup delay might be very short, or we might give it a bit more time to allow ALiVE to fully initialize before BFM tries to start. So then we're going to configure the map objectives. So this is sort of the effective grid size that we're going to use to tile our combat area. In this case, because it's a relatively small combat area, I'm going to reduce that terrain mesh down to 100 meters. And then the active objectives is how many of those tiles a given AI will know about at any given time. So the terrain tiles will be active or unactive depending on where they sit relative to the front line. And I'm going to turn on the debug for those so that we can watch as objectives become active and inactive. With our frontline manager, this is the number of points that make up the front line. I'm going to increase that to 100, and again, because it's a relatively small scenario, I'm going to reduce the front size and the range from which virtual units can influence the position of the front line. And I'm going to reduce the update period just so that we can watch it evolve more quickly in real time. And yes, we're going to leave on the draw front so that we can see the position of the front line on the map. Now the Reinforcements Manager is relatively straightforward. This will simply replace virtual units that get killed over some reinforcement period. So for the sake of this scenario I can make that a relatively short period of time. A unit that gets killed will almost immediately respawn, but in normal scenarios you would make this a period of 5, 10, 20 minutes, some longer duration. So that's all of the setup that's required for the BFM. Now we're going to place our ALiVE virtual commanders. So we're going to place a military commander at one end and one at the other, and we want to position these opposed to each other across the area that we want them to fight over. So unlike the standard ALiVE setup, the position of these commanders will have an impact on the BFM scenario. So we're wanting to position them at either end. And we're going to give them this chap on the southwestern side will be a CSAT commander, and the northeastern side will be a NATO commander. And then we're going to allocate them troops. So we can place virtual units by using the custom objectives. So what I'm going to do is place a custom objective, assign it as CSAT troops, and I'm going to give it a 0 size and a 0 priority. We want to use these objectives purely to place units. We don't want them to be part of the combat scenario. So that's why I'm setting both of those values to 0. And then we can give this commander whatever combination of units we want it to have. So you can construct what you think is a reasonable composition of troops. I'm going to make all the troops motorized simply so that the test scenario evolves quickly. But in this case I'm going to give this chap 40 units of motorized units. And we're going to sync that to its commander, and then likewise for the NATO, I'm going to allocate the same number of troops. So this will be a symmetric scenario, and it should should produce a relatively even but dynamic scenario that allows the players to conduct operations in and around the front. There's no limit to the number of these placement modules that you can have. So for example here, I could give this guy 20 but then place them in two different modules. So if we were working on a much larger map that was an all-terrain map, we could place multiple spawn points or initialisation points so that we get a more uniform spread of troops at the start. Now these custom objectives will also be used as respawn points. So in the Reinforcements Manager, you see use custom objectives as respawn points. Checking this box will allow these to be used as respawn points. And I'll cover in a later video how we can initialize custom respawn points separate from these objectives here. So that should be all that is required to set up a basic BFM scenario. If I hit play on this, right, so here we are. Now recall that we had that 60-second startup delay. One of the features of a BFM scenario is the initialization period can be quite a bit longer than that of a standard ALiVE scenario. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to speed up the simulation, and we'll just sit and watch this as it initializes. Right, so BFM has started there. You can see the front line has been placed, and that is computed based on the positions of the commanders. So you can see the line has basically split our combat area in a direction perpendicular to the commanders. The map objectives, these red and blue circles, are the areas of the map that are currently known about by the commanders, and so all of their points of interest are focused around the front line. The red objective markers are known about by red guy, the blue objective markers are known about by blue guy, and then the kind of overlapping purple markers are common points of interest. So we're just going to sit and watch this evolve for a moment, and within whatever the ALiVE commander update period is, which I think is about 10 minutes, the commanders should start issuing orders to send their troops to those objectives. So that's starting now. you see the presence of blue 4 near the front line has pushed that front line forward, and so the points of interest have similarly been updated. So as these blue units push forward, that line will move, and so based on the density of troops on either side of the line, this front line will be pushed around, and at all times the commanders are most interested in the part of the map that is near or just in front of the front line. Now you can see that in the first round of orders, both commanders have prioritised one area of the map. This is normal at the startup phase. The commanders will gradually spread out their troops, and the scenario should become more uniform. Alright, so that's it for this first introduction. I hope that was helpful.